By now, we all know the 49ers suffered a terrible loss week one against Chicago. A lot of narratives have been created as to what is the team at this point. We got my man Marco Martinez to set the record straight. What's real and what's not. Stay tuned. What is up, fam? Thank you so much for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk. We got a great show because we have the man, the myth, the legend, one of my favorite guests to ever have on the show because he's so smart and so tapped in. That's my guy, Marco Martinez. Thank you, sir, for joining in today. How are you feeling tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, man. I love your show. Love what you do. I mean, you put out that great content. So as soon as I saw that invite, I definitely had to join you today.
Bro, I appreciate that. Well, Marco, I know we talked a little bit before the game. We haven't really talked after the game. I know you were spending it with family. Hopefully all of that was good. Clearly, I'm sure the game wasn't what you wanted to see. But now we're like on Wednesday, right? 3 days removed from the game. And what's most interesting to me, Marco, is all of these narratives that are being created. Right? So many people are jumping on or off the bandwagon when it comes to the 49ers. A lot of Monday morning quarterbacks, a lot of people that all of a sudden saw things before that they never mentioned, but they knew it was going to happen now. So I thought we'd go through some of these narratives and you set the record straight as to whether or not this is a real thing or whether or not this is not a real thing. Okay. So we're going to start off with obviously the most important position on the team, and that's quarterback. And the narrative that's starting to get around, Marco, is Trey Lance is a bad decision maker. Set the record straight, man. Is this an accurate depiction of Trey Lance, or is this just fake news?
This is for sure fake news, 100%. People could go back to watching his college tape, his first 2 games last year, this year. There hasn't been no bad decisions that were actually made. Now, what we're seeing from Trey Lance is even the interception he throws, people would say that's a bad decision. Actually, it is not a bad decision. The route is open. The bad throw is what it should be called. It is not a bad decision. He's trying to hold that safety who's robbing, right? The safety is playing a technique where he's able to do whatever he feels. So he goes one way. Trey's trying to hold him in the middle of the field. Trey needs to trust his arm a little bit more and just let that ball rip. Like, to be honest, that is not a bad decision. It's more
he just held it a little too long, right? He held it a little too long, and that's what gave the safety enough time or the linebacker enough time to get to the ball.
Yeah, so it's more so bad execution. So, and then people were trying to label his throw to Tyler Kroft a bad decision. That's a beautiful decision. He just missed the damn throw. Like, I don't get what's going on. I see a lot of people saying he's bailing from the pocket. Did y'all not see the pocket this week? Our left and right tackle were both getting work. He's stepping up in the pocket. One of them, I would say, was a bad decision to step up into the pocket, but not a bad decision in terms of being a decision maker. He stepped up into the pocket, stepped right into Trent Williams' man, as Trent Williams had him locked up. And that just comes with time and playing with these offensive linemen, understanding what you need to do in certain situations, especially down in the red zone. More so, he's going to need a bail out of there instead of stepping up into the pocket. But I definitely don't see a bad decision maker from everything I've seen from college tape. His first 2 games last year, this game, I didn't see any bad decisions, really. What people were trying to say is more so he's not executing what he needs to do. at the end of the day. You could say these throws are bad decisions, but I don't see it. And you're getting a lot of these Monday morning quarterbacks. You're getting a lot of these old talking heads, coaches who want to become relevant again. Their names haven't been mentioned in the media in a very damn long time. So what are they doing? They're smart. They know the 49ers are a big conversation to talk about. So they're putting Trey Lance's name in their mouths, not realizing they probably didn't even watch that game, and just seeing the stat line that he had an interception and saying, yeah, he's a bad decision maker. Terrible stuff.
Yeah, and I agree with you totally. I mean, the decision, you could tell that he's reading the field. Going through his progressions the right way. I actually think he's he's better than what I expected in the pocket, as far as he's doing kind of stuff that's a little bit elite, like swim moves, like stepping up. You did mention the one where he maybe couldn't have, but for the most part, he's feeling the pressure and moving in the right direction. It's just he doesn't like it. He can't disappear, right? At the end of the day, like there's only so much he could do. One thing though, Marco, I think that I am noticing, and this is something that anybody who's reasonable could understand. This isn't a kid that threw the ball a lot in college, right? So you can tell where he hesitates the most, Marco, is on any type of passing route that timing is involved. And that's where I feel like he's struggling the most. Like there was in the red zone, there was a play where the first option was an in and out to Jennings, and he hesitated on that throw. Even he had that throw, if he would have just been decisive, and that probably could have been a touchdown, at the worst an incompletion. But it seems like that's where he's hesitating the most, because he doesn't have reps, right? He's gonna get better as he gets more reps. But even the interception, it was the right decision, but he hesitated. So the timing was off, and that's what led to the interception. So what can you talk about just that? Is that accurate to say that he does struggle a little bit on the timing passes, or am I overblowing that as well?
So I wouldn't say for sure he's struggling on timing routes, but I think it's more so on trusting his arm in the NFL, right? These guys are bigger, they're faster. So the timing is a little faster timing. So I think it's more so just trusting his arm talent at this level. As you can see, one of the throws he made to Ross Dwelly, he trusted his arm. And I think that's when we're going to start seeing a little bit more with him, because the throw that he should have hit to Jennings, it would have been a nice throw. It would have been on literally as he's breaking, but that's more for me. That's more so not trusting his arm to fit it in, because if I'm correct, it's the throw you're talking about in the red zone, actually correct. In the end zone, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's more so him seeing, okay, this team is so good that if I make this throw and it's a little bit late, or my arm isn't good enough and it's intercepted, now I'm putting this team in a situation to lose, rather than if I'm smart with the ball and I make sure someone is 100% wide open. Well, that's a wide open throw in the NFL. And I think just the reps and not allowing him to get all those reps last year kind of hurts now, right? Because now he's learning what an open guy in the NFL is. And if we look at what he's capable of doing with arm talent, that's the throw he's going to be making in at least in a couple games, right? I expect 2 to 3 games he's making that throw, because he knows that's a wide open throw. So I think it's more so just trusting his arm rather than the timing route. Because if we look at a couple games last year, including in the preseason, he hit some timing throws. So I don't think it's necessarily to do with 100% timing. I think it's more so trusting his arm.
That makes a lot of sense. And, you know, like you said, there's one thing to see it like on the game film. There's another thing to like see it live and have enough confidence in yourself and trusting yourself, like you put it, to actually do that. But one thing, you know, Fernando is jumping in. He says, Sunil, what can you say? Trey is critical of himself. That's one thing that really gives me a lot of hope, is he's taking accountability. He went on that. He didn't shy away from throwing the blame on himself. And he has that kind of like photographic memory. It reminds me of like that one famous interview that LeBron James did, where he like recollected this play from like start to finish, like this whole series. And the fact that he was calling out where his mistakes were, the throws he missed, the decisions, like even the interception, what he was trying to do, and that he has that kind of calculated mindset, to me shows that he's capable and he's smart enough to be able to understand what's going on. I agree with you. I think it's more about just the confidence in himself to believe that he could do it. And once that happens, Marco, we're going to see a completely different quarterback, I believe.
Yeah, it's just the reps and the allowing him to do it. I think the him being critical of himself is so important, not only for his growth as a quarterback, but for this entire organization. Because if we look back, and I hate to compare the two quarterbacks, but if we look back to the last quarterback that we had, right, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Garoppolo would constantly say stuff like "we lost" or "we didn't do enough." The offense didn't do enough, right? But instead, Trey Lance is taking it upon himself, saying, "No, the defense did enough for me. I didn't do enough. I have the ball in my hands every single play. It is my responsibility to do good for this team." So that's something that haven't seen in a very long time for the 49ers. And I think for me, it's one of those things that it's not only showing his leadership, but it's showing who the kid is, right? He's so young, he's so talented, he understands that the expectations are high, and he knows his expectations are, guess what? They're higher than every 49er fan has for him. So I think that's a very, very positive sign to see how critical he is to go on top of the IQ he has. Because he named off right away, right after the game. 5 plays. Boom. Those are the 5 plays that the reason why we lost the game. 5 plays that I want back that I would have done something different and we would have won.
Yeah, and I mean the accountability shows a lot of leadership, right? Because that's like one of the knocks. He wasn't given a captaincy and all this kind of stuff. Just because you don't have the C on your jersey doesn't mean you're still not a leader on this team. Clearly, his position gives him that leadership role, and it's nice to see him come out, take accountability, and not just like negativity, Marco. It shows confidence that he knows what he needs to change to be able to do it. So he's not just pointing out problems. He's not just complaining. He's actually giving solutions that he's going to work on the next week, which is great to hear.
No, yeah, absolutely. And it's going to keep growing. And locker rooms love that when someone takes accountability. Hey, it's my fault, even if it's not your fault. So as a coach, because I do coach high school basketball, as a coach, you want your players, your leaders, to take accountability even for the stuff they don't do, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, a great teammate is going to, if throw makes a pass to his teammate drops the ball and it goes out of bounds. A great teammate is going to, hey, my fault. I should have made the pass. Like, my fault. Maybe I threw it too hard. Maybe I threw it too much to the right, to the left. And that's what he's doing right now. And that's something I love about Trey Lance and the growth that he's taking within his first 2 years of the NFL. That's something that is phenomenal for any coach to see. If you coach at any level, that's something that you're respecting the hell out of. So I love it.
And Kali Young, I love that you said this, Kali, because we want to end with a positive when it comes to Trey. Please talk about the layered throw to Ray Ray. That throw was gorgeous. Do you recall the throw that he's talking about, Marco?
Oh, yeah, I recall the call. So it's a beautiful crossing route. Shout out to Ray Ray McLeod. Ran a nice route. But at the end of the day, the ball has to be thrown by someone. And it was put in between 3 players, right? Right over Raekwon Smith's hand, right in front of Eddie Jackson, a safety, and then the other corner on the top is breaking down at the same time. If that throw is missed by a margin, Eddie Jackson either breaks it up. Roquan, if it's thrown a little too low, Roquan pops it up. It's intercepted. And if he throws it too high, it's intercepted by that corner coming down. That was one of the best throws I've seen from a young quarterback. It might even be one of the better throws I've seen all week from the first week of NFL season. That throw, people don't understand how hard that throw is to not only layer it over a linebacker, but to fit it in between 3 defenders where there is no error. And a lot of people kept saying, I've argued with a lot of people saying, Trey Lance is not accurate. Trey Lance is not accurate. No, that's a big BS. It's a misconception. Trey Lance is a very accurate quarterback. Now, what he needs to work on is his intermediate throws and his checkdowns. That's all I've seen from Trey Lance. But when he's pushing the ball downfield, he is going to be an accurate quarterback. Another throw I would say that was a very accurate throw. The one he hit on a crossing route, a wide open Brandon Ayuk, everyone kept saying, oh, he's not hitting these receivers in stride for yak. Hit him in stride for yak. Another one, if I kept saying, if Brandon Ayuk would have ran that Jawan Jennings go route, that's a touchdown. Deebo Samuel, that's a touchdown. That ball might be a little. We could nitpick and say ball's a little bit underthrown. One thing I would say is Jawan Jennings is not a fast guy. I would rather you underthrow that ball because he's a guy that could go up and win a 50-50 ball rather than overthrowing him, especially when he's that wide open. That is something that I did like seeing from Trey Lance. Those 3 plays on top of the Ross Dwelly play we just talked about a few minutes ago, where he stepped up and rifled it in. I thought he had some beautiful throws on the day. Some of the throws were throws that we didn't see a lot of the quarterbacks that played for the 49ers in the past 20 years make.
I agree with you. Some of those, especially outside the hash, he seems very elite at those type of throws, which are some of the more difficult throws for him. They tend to be the easier throws. Like you said, some of the things that are quote unquote easy are the things that he probably needs to get a little bit better at, which is good because those throws are easier to get good at. Harold Murillo, hello everyone. What's up, Harold? Thanks for jumping in. James Coombs, let's not forget that throw with horrible weather conditions during the game. Yeah, that actually increases the level of difficulty, right, Marco?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The ball's a little bit wet. The conditions, the high wind. You have to be a strong arm to make that throw. The last time we've seen a quarterback play in these kind of conditions, actually in Levi Stadium, we saw what happened. The ball starts flying on you when you don't have the strongest arm and stuff like that. So the conditions do play a factor, but at the same time, if you ask any NFL athlete, any big time athlete, they're not going to blame the weather conditions on
Right.
anything. They're gonna take the blame, and they're gonna be like, hey, I got to be better. I got to have a stronger arm. I got to do whatever I can to make that kind of throw. So
Right. Good for him. So nobody I know knows PFF better than you, my man. And when it comes to their rankings and their algorithms, some people like them, some people don't. They're the only website that actually ranks the offensive line and give grades to the offensive line that I see. And I don't know if you saw the PFF rankings for the 49ers offensive line, but they were ranked 1, I think, in pass blocking and ranked 5th, I think, in run blocking. So overall, they were like the top offensive line in the league. Is the 49ers O-line one of the best in the league? Is this real or is this fake news?
let me be honest with the 49ers fans real quick. It's fake news. All right, it's fake news. I don't care what like. PFF is a terrible grading system at times, and I think this is one of the times it's a terrible grading system. No disrespect to PFF, they put a lot of great stuff out there, right? Like some of their grades are pretty spot on. I thought one of their grades that was spot on was Spencer Burford and Aaron Banks. I thought those two had very good games, especially in the run game. Now, pass pro, I thought our left tackle, our right tackle, and our center got to work a few times. Now, what they look at is different than what other people like. So the grading scale that they look at, if you're even close to the quarterback, it's considered a pressure. Even if you're stonewalled and you're literally just like being controlled, it's a pressure. So what they do and what they don't do and how they control things, I don't think the 49ers are one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And the other reason is I'm gonna be straight up. We have an interior offensive line that is young and inexperienced, and a right tackle that at times could look like one of the worst right tackles in all of football, right? Like, it's not a lie. We've seen him in pass protection, and this is something that it gets me going a little bit because Mike McGlinchey is a better right tackle than he puts on tape or that he shows, right? He is a good right tackle in the run game. He's phenomenal in the run game. Pass pro, he could have reps where he looks phenomenal. He looks like one of the better right tackles in the NFL. And then there's times where he looks like the worst right tackle in the league. Like, he does that. And I don't get it because he's been in the league for a few years. You would think he would get better by now, but it's the same old thing week in, week out with him. So that is a big question mark. Does he come back? Does he not? Does he want more money? Does he stay for cheaper? I mean, in the run game, phenomenal, but this offense line is not the best in the league yet. They could make their way there because they're a young core, they're a young group. They can make their way, but right now, heck no.
So let's dissect this because obviously the offensive line, I think, is going to be key to how much success this offense has, right? Obviously, it's a run-first team, but if they're not running, how much time are they going to give Trey Lance as well? You did mention Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford having decent games. Let's talk about that first. What did you see out of their game that gives you hope that they can continue to grow and be the stalwarts there at the left and right guard positions?
So I still think Aaron Banks has a lot of room to grow in pass protection. In the run game, he looks pretty solid. He's opened up holes for Elijah Mitchell in the first half. Spencer Burford, he looks like a solid right guard already. In pass pro, he honestly is stonewalling dudes. He's making the right things, and and picking up stunts and stuff like that. In the run game, he's looking great. So I think those two, they have a lot of room to grow because they're young, right? So they're not coming in. They're not all pros instantly. They're not Quentin Nelson's at left guard and right guard right away. Like it's not happening. You don't those
Right.
don't grow on trees. So what I do want to see them get better at is understanding the entire system because you could tell Kyle was kind of scared to do a little bit of his outside zone and went a little bit inside zone heavy with Jeff Wilson. Is it a showing of he doesn't trust these guys in outside zone? Is it the center that he doesn't trust? I don't know, but like Fernando said, I do think one of these days in the next 4 years, Spencer Burford will be a Pro Bowler. I really do think he is going to be a Pro Bowler with the talent he has. He has everything you need to be a Pro Bowler. He has the athleticism, the length, the strength, everything you could think of, the
The
grit, right?
nasty. The nasty.
Exactly. He has everything you could possibly think of for a offensive lineman to be a Pro Bowler. Now, Aaron Banks, he has a lot of room to grow in strength. And I thought he was going to be stronger than his rookie season, but his strength, his inability to anchor down could be a question mark at times. But if he could learn a lot from Trent Williams, and I think a big thing that I did see him get better in is pass protection from preseason to now. And I kept saying it would happen because of the best left tackle in all of football being next to you. Your assignment is much easier. You literally get the best left tackle telling you, hey, this is coming at you, by the way. Be ready, right? Like, so he did get better. I think as the season goes on, his confidence is going to go up. He's going to become a better left guard. Now, center, I think center could possibly be an issue as time comes because
Yeah, and let's talk about that because Brendel obviously is somebody that the team seems pretty high on. Clearly, he's been cut 5 times in his career. He's played for multiple different teams. Never really got. He has only started or played in 3 games. And it was touted his athleticism, his athleticism, his athleticism. But what are you seeing from the center position? Obviously, you're not sold on Brendel. What is it that you saw that maybe he could build upon, and what is it that he's just showing that he's not good at?
So I think Jake Brendel is a guy who I wouldn't say I'm not necessarily sold on, but I think he is a guy who you let play this year and then next year you either draft a center or you go sign a center. Like I don't think he's the long-term answer because of the fact that he's a guy who he has to work an extra step in the run game. He has great feet. The athleticism is there. So in the run game, but he had the strength for me sometimes could be lost. In pass protection, the IQ is there, so he knows what's going on. But again, the ability to anchor, the ability to win on a second move isn't there yet. And I think it's just a matter of reps in the NFL because he's always been a guy who only gets reps in practice, hasn't really played in the NFL, hasn't in the inexperience to seeing different things, right? So that's what he needs to work on. Now, I don't think I think he could work on every single one of those factors in the NFL because every game he's going to face someone new, a different counter, a different technique, a different
Strength level.
strength level, right? So like eventually, I think it'll come as it goes. But I think he has a lot to work on in terms of being a complete center, especially because center is the key thing in Kyle Shanahan's offense.
Now, Marco, you talked about lack of strength in Brendel. You talked about lack of strength in Aaron Banks. Obviously, strength isn't something that you could just gain in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, right? That's what their strength level is. So if they can't necessarily get stronger, how do they overcome their deficiencies in strength? What can they work on to just not get overpowered by a player?
So in order to get away with not being the strongest dude in the room, it's always going to be athleticism and IQ, right? If you're not the biggest or strongest guy in the room, you got to be the smartest and the most athletic guy in the room, and that
So like
allows
technique, are you talking about like technique, being your hands in the right position, beating people
yeah.
to a spot, things like that?
So you have to understand, like at the offensive line perspective, like you got to know when and where to shoot your hands, right? You can't get your hands outside if you know this dude is a guy that's going to chop him down and beat you, right? Like you have to get your hands inside. You have to have your feet properly positioned and stuff like that. Like, I mean, I'm not the biggest offensive line guru or guy.
Yeah.
Like I know the basics of offensive line, but But I do understand that if you're not the best at being strong and being that big dude who could stonewall dudes all the time, like Trent Williams relies at times on his athleticism and his IQ. When he's getting beat, he relies on the IQ of, okay, now I need to reposition my feet and hands, and he does it so fast because he's so athletic. And I think that's what Aaron Banks and Jake Brendel could learn from is, that's funny. One of the comments. So that's something they can learn from is learning how to reposition their feet and their hands when they are losing a rep instantly. And once they do that, they'll be fine. Because a lot of times we look at the bad plays from offensive linemen. We don't look at every single rep they won. They could go 20 reps in a row winning, and then that one rep that they lose, everyone goes, well, Aaron Banks sucks. Jake Brendel sucks, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that does go out the window with offensive line, unfortunately, because their bad plays are the ones that are more so televised. You see the replay on, oh, how did he lose this rep? He gave up the sack, but there's never giving credit when they open up a big hole or they stonewall a dude for a 80-yard touchdown pass. That's one of the biggest things that bothers me with the offensive linemen.
Yeah, similar to cornerbacks, right? You could be 98% you could do right, but that one play that you slip or penalty or whatever, that's what you get remembered for the rest of the game. So it's a tough position. So one thing, Marco, and this is something that I brought up a lot in the offseason, it's something I wanted to see if this gets fixed. The 49ers are terrible at scoring in the first half. Like, for some reason, they just don't put up points. Last season, it felt like the only time they were putting up points was in the last 2 to 4 minutes of the second quarter when it was like 2-minute drill, right? When it isn't scripted plays and it's just like, just instinct plays, things like that. I think Kyle Shanahan is a genius. I think he scripts up amazing plays. But there is this narrative that's starting to grow that he might not be the best at decision-making and play calling when his plan A isn't working. Right. So when, for example, Elijah Mitchell went down, all of a sudden now there wasn't a plan B that was very effective to be able to do that. So is the narrative that maybe Kyle Shanahan should give up play calling duties something that is real, or is this fake news as well?
I think it's fake news in terms of who do you really have to call the plays on the coaching staff? Like, realistically, those guys have left, right? Mike McDaniel, LaFleur left with Robert Saleh. So, like, those guys have left the building that he could actually trust to call the plays. So
Anthony Lynn is also somebody who was questionable with his play calling decisions, right?
Yeah. So, like, if you're one of the best game planners or guys that draws up the X's and O's, I think Kyle Shanahan has actually proven that he's a good play caller. Now, he's proven also at the same time to have a tendency to go away from things that are working. He tends to, hey, if this is working, well, they're going to eventually change something up. So he changes before they change their defensive looks, and then it puts them in bad situations. So I think Kyle Shanahan should be the play caller. I think he does a hell of a job, especially because when Kyle was rolling, there's a nickname that Kyle has for how good he calls the plays. People call him Disrespectful Kyle for a reason, right? Like, that nickname that he was given by fans in 2019 when he was calling plays perfectly for Jimmy Garoppolo in that 2019 offense was phenomenal. One of the best offensive seasons I've ever seen from a 49ers perspective since I was born, right? Like, I haven't seen many offensive teams like that. I only expect him to continue to grow with Trey Lance. We got to remember this is only his first game with Trey Lance of actually being his official starter. And it was in the worst conditions he could possibly ask for. But we did see him draw up 2 nice throws, right? 2 wide open throws, a wide open vertical route and a wide open crossing route. And both of them were big plays, a 40-yarder and a 30-yarder. So I think with dry weather, with better weather, we're going to see a much better offense. I think Kyle's going to be a way better play caller as the season goes on with Trey Lance as his quarterback. So I don't think it's one of those ones where fans should worry yet, especially when you're that high of an octane offense. If we look at Kyle's offenses in the past, he always gets the best from his offense from the personnel he has. If we look at him with Ryan and Julio Jones, they put up MVP-like season. They went to the Super Bowl. He made Jimmy Garoppolo a much better quarterback than he was Matt Schaub at the time. He got the best out of
Bless you.
Oh, jeez. Thank you.
Dab on
He
him,
got
baby. Dab on him.
he got the best out of Johnny Manziel and what's his name, Brian Hoyer at a time. Like we're like you can't do everything to be perfect, and I think that's something that he understands, and I think that's why he'll never give up the play calling. I think there's also an ego issue though. Like I don't know if you see it or you could talk about it, but do you think it's also an ego issue that hey, if I'm the best offensive mind in the game, why am I having someone else call the plays?
I do think he has like a control thing where he needs to be in control. I feel like he's actually gotten a lot less egotistical. Like I feel like he's taking more input from others than he has in the past. So I do see him getting better at that. But I do think he still has that like little control thing where he doesn't want to give up too much control. But I do want to, because some of the guys, I think this, push the button for some guys that maybe are seeing similar things to me. Harold Morello says, season after season, it's an ongoing issue. 49ers defense get interceptions, and the offense cannot convert turnovers to points. And this is something that I'm talking about. There's another comment here. Kyle hasn't trusted a QB since he had Ryan 2016. He's trying to make up for QB deficiencies, and Lance is a first-year starter. This is my question for you, Marco. Kyle Shanahan is an offensive genius. I agree with that. But there is something to be said that every single year he's been here as a 49ers head coach, it's the defense that's had to bail this team out consistently, right? If the defense wasn't as good as it was, there's very few moments that you could pick to where the offense is the reason why this team has won games. Off the top of my head, I could think of, the New Orleans game where Jimmy went off, right? There's one game where the offense really rose to the occasion when the defense was just letting Drew Brees score all of those points. But to be an offensive genius, like you look at a guy like Andy Reid, Andy Reid's defenses aren't better than the offenses he puts up every year. And you could talk about that at Kansas City. You could talk about that when he was with the Eagles, right? But that isn't something that you could say for Kyle Shanahan. And we're in year 6 now, Marco. So in year 6, if you still don't have an offense that at least is equal to the defense, because look, the defense just has studs all over the place, and so obviously the defense is going to be good. But what do you make for the fact that this offense seems inept compared to how good this defense is?
So if we go back to there's some times where a lot of people will criticize like certain teams or whatever, but if we go back to I believe it was the 2019 season, right? The 49ers offense actually averaged 29 points a game. They were averaging 30 points a game, whether that's the defense giving them the ball back, but they were putting up points, right? And I think that was more so Kyle in his bag at the time because 2017, Kyle Shanahan, I believe, was hired, right? 2017 hired. 2018, their offense really doesn't have an identity.
Jimmy gets injured, right?
Jimmy gets injured. So they don't really have an identity, and then you're having to play CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins, which if any team you could give Andy Reid those two quarterbacks, he is not putting up points. Like you could, you know what I mean? So he's not going to put up the point. But then 2019, Kyle Shanahan gets a Jimmy Garoppolo who is still at the time the NFL had not figured him out yet because there wasn't tape on him. There was only 5 games, but those game tapes really weren't scripted. Like they were literally just him only knowing half the playbook. So NFL teams didn't get to react, but he put up 30 points. It was like 29.6. He was the 3rd highest scoring offense in the NFL behind Baltimore and Kansas City. And then last year, injuries happened. Jimmy Garoppolo isn't fully healthy. So if you look at last year, which was 2021, the offense struggled. They were around 24 point something or 25. So they put up that's a pretty solid number for a team that had a quarterback that was injured all season. That was like 15. I think that's like they were ranked 15th offense in total points per game. So I don't think it's an issue of Kyle Shanahan putting points on the board. I think the issue is Kyle Shanahan understanding you cannot put too many points on a team, right? Like that's his issue. He gets so caught up in this situation where he goes, okay, I'm up 31-10, but not understanding at the NFL things change like this, right? Like a touchdown interception, that team is back in the game. So he needs to. I think his problem is understanding you got to keep your foot on the gas at all times. But then at the same time, he gets criticized for doing that because when he kept his foot on the gas in previous Super Bowls, previous stuff like that, a sack happens. Next thing you know, he's relying on his quarterback to execute, right? You know not to take a sack. You're an NFL quarterback. Quarterback doesn't throw it away. He takes a sack. Now, Kyle gets blamed for that, right? So that's the thing that what sucks for Kyle is he gets this blame game where a lot of people were like, oh, Kyle, you suck. You called in the Super Bowl. You blew the Super Bowl in Atlanta. And then the same thing with the 49ers when they were up 20-10. Well, no, he's keeping his foot on the gas because he knows the other teams can score fast.
Right.
And next thing you know, his quarterback is not executing. His quarterback is going to the line of scrimmage, killing the play, going to the next play that he gave him. So that is not on Kyle. That's now on the quarterback, right? So I think it's more so having that trust and having the confidence in a quarterback. And the reason why we haven't seen Kyle's offense go crazy or go bananas. But we did see it in 2019. 2020, obviously, they took a little hit on points per game because of the injuries to the quarterbacks. But they've been pretty solid in terms of averaging points. I wouldn't call wave the white flag for Kyle Shanahan to be done as a play caller just yet. Let's see him cook with Trey Lance for a little bit, and then people are gonna be like, okay, now we get why Kyle Shanahan got a quarterback like this. Now we understand why Kyle wasn't able to put up as many points in the past because he did it in 2019, 30 points a game with Trey Lance and weaker receivers, in my opinion. Like not having Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel still wasn't who Deebo Samuel really is. So I think he'll be fine.
All right, I love the optimism, my man. So obviously the biggest injury news from week 1 was Elijah Mitchell is out. They put him on IR, so he's at least missing 4 games, which is like the minimum, I guess. Could be a even longer process with that MCL sprain. Obviously, the running game is extremely important, Marco, to the 49ers offense. Jeff Wilson Jr. still hasn't looked like the Jeff Wilson Jr. from a few years ago that put up that amazing season. Is it true or is it fake news the 49ers running game is in trouble without Mitchell?
And they in real trouble. I'll be 100% honest. They in real trouble. So you draft 3 third-round picks in the last 2 years. One of them's no longer on the team. One of them is inactive week 1. I've been saying Jeff Wilson Jr.'s explosiveness and his speed is no longer there. People didn't want to listen to it. I saw it in training camp. Saw it in preseason. Right? We saw it. Now he's averaging 2.5 yards a carry during the first regular season game. I mean, it might be that Kyle Shanahan wasn't calling what he wanted to see, what Jeff Wilson was looking for. But when you're called on and you're given the runs, you got I believe you got 9 carries for 22 yards, 2.5, 2.4 yards per carry. Hey, that's a problem, especially when the guy that just went down is averaging 7 yards a pop. Hey, that's a problem. That's a real problem. So they better hope Jordan Mason or TDP shows up and takes the load, or Marlon Mack that they just signed explosiveness is coming back, because Jeff Wilson Jr. to me is a problem to be a guy that carries the load for 8 games. Because from what I've heard, he ain't coming back. MCL is not coming back no earlier than 6 weeks. So 6 to 8 weeks is what it is. Right. More so on the 8 weekend. So I definitely don't kind of worried about the offense, the run game, but at the same time, we're going to see a little bit different wrinkles with Kyle Shanahan using Trey Lance in terms of allowing the entire offense to take the next step in the run game. So I think that's what's going to fit. Jeff Wilson goes crazy and bananas during the zone read stuff or just the regular outside zone. People are going to be like, wow, Jeff Wilson's back. Yeah, Jeff Wilson's back. But realistically, teams are actually not stacking the box as hard as they have in the past. So it's allowing a little bit more wiggle room. So that's why we might see a little bit more production. But I think the main 2 guys the Niners need to rely on is Jordan Mason and TDP to carry the load. I don't think Jeff Wilson Jr. could be that guy, really, honestly.
So I thought that – so, look, I know that Kyle Shanahan usually strays away from starting rookies. He just has a thing, right? He'd rather go with veterans over rookies. But when it came to the running back position, last year when Raheem Mostert was injured, instead of going to a hasty I don't think Jeff Wilson was active at that point. But and they had the 3rd round pick, Trey Sermon, but they ended up going with Elijah Mitchell, who was the lower draft pick, right? Because he had such a great off season, and it ended up working out really well. Elijah Mitchell obviously, broke a lot of rookie records, and that ended up being the right pick. What do you make, Marco? Because for me, there's a lot of similarities in the rise of Jordan Mason to what we saw in Elijah Mitchell the year before, right? And he got no touches. Like they ended up going to Jeff Wilson Jr. It really ended up being more about Deebo Samuel, and it's like why did he not give Jordan Mason the run? And even if you're trusting what he's saying right now, it looks like it's Jeff Wilson, and then we'll see who the second back is. So what do you make of it? Is this Kyle Shanahan posturing? Or do you think he's back in his old ways where he just doesn't trust the rookies to be able to take advantage of, an opportunity to now wanting somebody to step up?
I think he's back in his old ways in terms of, so he has a young quarterback. He's trying to rely on a veteran guy who knows the system, who isn't going to mess up in the backfield alongside Trey Lance, who, if they do go play action, that actually running back is going to run the proper route or have to pass protect the proper way. I think that's why he's going with Jeff Wilson a little bit. But let me tell you guys, that was the perfect opportunity, the perfect game for Jordan Mason and TDP. The power, the speed that Jordan Mason provides is the perfect opportunity in a very, very, very heavy rain, muddy-like game for him to do something. Especially with TDP. We know TDP has that pop. So I was confused. Those two were inactive. Like, you're going to run 40 times this game. Yet you have Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson, and Jordan Mason. Like, I honestly would have kept someone else inactive and kept those four active, because if someone goes down with the slippery weather, you're more likely to get injured in a weather-like game like that than a regular sunny game. So I was very shocked. I don't like the idea of playing Deebo as your running back. I really don't.
I mean, you don't want – for sure. James Coombs, actually, Mason was active week 1. It was TDP that they made inactive. So the 3 active running backs were Mitchell, Jeff Wilson, and Jordan Mason. When Mitchell went down, though, Jordan Mason didn't get any carries. So yeah, that was interesting to me. I do think that, it just boggles my mind. Like, Jeff Wilson wasn't doing anything. So why not give the rookie a shot? You know what I mean? Like, something has to work, right? And, he went back to just not trusting. And I get it. You make a really great point. Trey Lance is young, right? He's inexperienced. The right and left guard are inexperienced. The center is inexperienced. It's a lot of inexperience. And then the running back is inexperienced as well. It's kind of like maybe too much for Kyle Shanahan's, like, comfort, right? He's like, I need somebody that knows what they're doing. Problem is, Jeff Wilson just isn't the Jeff Wilson of old. He had the pop last year. We thought, okay, maybe, usually after an Achilles injury, that next year, right, 2 years removed, that's when you get it back. But it's not looking like he got it back. But let's hope it might have just been weather issues, right? We saw the rain, but what we didn't realize is it was monsoon before. So that field was really, really rough. You probably can't cut as well, especially if you've already come off of an Achilles injury. Maybe he was a little bit hesitant to take, the type of steps that he needed or whatnot. There is going to be rain against Seattle, but let's hope that it's a better field conditions, and maybe Jeff Wilson could show that he is better than what we're seeing right now. This obviously, to most people, is the reason that the game was lost, right? A lot of penalties on the defensive side, Marco. Very familiar to what we saw last season. Is this real or is this fake that the 49ers defense is undisciplined?
I think all 49ers teams week 1 under Kyle Shanahan have been undisciplined. It's been questioned at one point where, how's it going? When every week 1 Kyle Shanahan's team comes out and they're penalized a lot, they look sloppy, they question Kyle Shanahan's coaching ability, right? And I think there's good questions to ask. What the hell does Kyle Shanahan do week 1 that he doesn't do, or what does he do week 2 through 16 or 17 that he doesn't do in week 1? Like, he allows them to be so undisciplined. Like, for me, I would have benched Dre Greenlaw. I don't care how good he is. I don't care. when you're making constant, when a guy is wrapped up in a game like this, and it's a
You're
very
just
tight
like,
game, and you go after a face mask, that would have been, I would have like, bro, you're done, bro. Like, sit down, like, relax. I'll throw Aziz, I'll throw DFF out there. Like to me, I think they're just an undisciplined team in the first game. I think it's just because they don't play in the preseason. Cal doesn't let his guys play in the preseason.
I think that's a big point, Marco. What do you think about that? Because this is not just right now. Like, there's been games that they've won, but it was still too close for comfort. They should have blown out teams. But in the first, like even last year, they let Detroit back in, things like that. Do you think there's something to be said that maybe Kyle Shanahan doesn't manage preseason as well? It doesn't, like, is too conservative with his starters and not giving them that up to speed type experience that the preseason, few series in the preseason might help them with.
Yeah, I think all coaches do it though now, right? Like, all coaches don't want their starters out there because of the risk of injury. But it turns week one, and it's league wide, not just Kyle Shanahan. We look at every game from the NFL this year. Week one, there were some ugly games. Like, it was
Right.
just hard to watch. Like, it was like, well, all right, well, week 4 preseason pretty much is what today is. Like, literally, that's what it looked like league wide. So I give Kyle Shanahan some slack because obviously you don't want your guys to be getting hurt in the preseason. You don't want them to get the reps. But then he does some weird stuff where he has certain dudes go out there and get reps. Like, he played Banks and Burford the entire first half of a couple games. He played Hufanga for a little while. Like, it's like, all right, well, what are you doing? Like, you want these guys to not play, but then you play some of the young guys way longer than you should. But I get the inexperience, but then it's like, all right, well, I guess that's how the NFL is moving, where they don't want any of their guys to play preseason and instead would rather have them do a controlled environment of like the joint practices. But if you're going to do that, make 2 joint practices, not 1. Unfortunately, the 49ers had such a tight period of their preseason games, so that's why they ended up having only 1. But I think it's an issue that Kyle Shanahan's teams have had in the past, and I think it'll always be an issue because he's one of those. I feel like he's too much of a players coach where he doesn't get on his players for the undisciplinedness. So he doesn't bench them when he should, and it's, to me, I think that's a good and a bad sign, to be honest. So depends on how people want to view it. I'm cool with either one.
Yeah, I mean, we did see also the 49ers get penalized a lot in the first half of last season and really be able to clean it up later on. I hope that it doesn't take a whole half of the season again for them to clean this up. It does seem like, guys like Dre Greenlaw, it seemed like Dre Greenlaw was just trying to earn a contract. Like, he was just doing too much. I was a little bit disappointed because Charvarius Ward is somebody who knows how to play without, gaining penalties, and he had a penalty on himself. A lot of just getting out of position. Just like I said, I think they just weren't up to speed as much as they wanted to. Hopefully, that was all just week 1 stuff, and they could play a very clean game coming up this next week. And speaking of this next week, Seattle is currently number 1 in the NFC West.
Weird. So weird.
Right? The team that everybody has as the 4th best team in the NFC West is the only undefeated team. And they went out and beat a team that a lot of people have in the Super Bowl in the Denver Broncos at Denver, right? So very interesting. Clearly, Denver also was very 49er-ish with the amount of penalties that they had and, the type of play. But week 2, right? Week 1 is done. We don't know if Kittle's going to be playing. We know Elijah Mitchell is out. We know Jimmy Ward is out. Not sure what we know about Aziz, if he's going to be in there. And I think that's Brunskill may or may not be available. But do you think that the 49ers bounce back against Seattle? And what do they need to do, Marco, to be able to get a victory over a division rival, which is always tricky no matter what, the type of talent that they have over there?
I got slandered for a tweet I posted out yesterday, but I'm going to say it on air like I did. I'm not going to backpedal because people were coming at me like, oh, you're in the DMs or you're stupid or on the comments or whatnot. It's going to be an easy victory for the 49ers. Let me repeat that again. It's going to be an easy dub for the 49ers. If we look at so everyone's overhyping Seattle, right? They're like, "Oh my god, Geno Smith looks so amazing." Well, yeah, he had a solid game. Nothing special. Look at the second half. He allowed Seattle to get the ball a couple times, right? Or not Seattle, Denver to get the ball a few times more. He didn't look that fantastic in the second half. He had a great first half. He had I want to say he started the game 13 for 13.
Great first quarter.
Yeah, like a great for literally his first quarter was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then the second half, he's throwing balls in the dirt, missing receivers. So it's like, okay, he missed a couple throws in the second half. It was like, that's a throw you have to make to win games. But if we look at something similar, right, the penalties that the Broncos had were very crucial on allowing Seattle to win. Now, one thing I saw in people were like, "Oh, just penalties. Like that doesn't matter." There's actually been studies for every 100 yards a team has in penalties, it mounts to 7 points in actual game score, right? So giving 100 yards, either Niners and the Denver Broncos did it. They gave the other team 7 points. So now, check this out. Seattle loses by 9, right? They gave Seattle 7 points. And then Denver goes and fumbles not once, 2 damn times at the line of scrimmage. Like, I guarantee you, Kyle Shanahan's offense is not fumbling 2 times at the 1 yard line because Kyle's either having Debo punch it in or Jeff Wilson or one of the other backs are punching it in, no problem.
Right.
or even a QB
Trey
by Trey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 21 points. That's a 21-point swing, right? That they gave Seattle because of the fumble issues and the 100-yard and penalties. The Denver Broncos lost by a point. On top of that, their coaches, one of the worst coaches I've ever seen. That was one of the worst coaching stances I've ever seen from a coach.
The time management was really weird.
It was terrible. The thing is, you have 3 minutes left and I get it, Russ didn't look that great, but you have to take some shots down the field at some point. You have to be a little bit risky when you're down a point in the game, especially when you're trying to go win the game with a game-tying field goal or game-winning field goal. But instead, you kick it from 99 yards. Let's take the risk. 75-yard field goal it is. Bro, what are we doing here? Your kickers missed every 60-yard plus field goal he's ever kicked in his life. Make life easier on the dude. But I don't think if we look at everything that Seattle has, right, their offensive linemen, two right tackles are young rookies. They played pretty solid, but if we look at what Denver has, Denver doesn't have the defensive line the 49ers have. They don't have the linebacker group the 49ers have. Now, what I do give the Denver Broncos a lot of credit for is they have probably equal or better secondary than the 49ers, at least right now, because Jimmy Ward is out. Mm-hmm. So that is a better thing that they had. Now, if we go and we look at something, key things I'm going to give for everyone to understand on why I think the 49ers are going to win easily, okay? So the Denver Broncos only ran the ball 20 times, which was the biggest reason why they lost the ball. They decided to go into Seattle, and I believe this was a game where they wanted Seattle to play a hard-mouth game, and everyone wants to see Russell Wilson and against the Seattle Seahawks. They come in, they allow Russ to cook. Russ isn't a quarterback that cooks. I don't get why people are saying let Russ cook. He's not a quarterback that cooks. Never has been a quarterback that cooks, right? So, you throw the ball 42 times. Now, anytime Russ is throwing 42 times, I would say thank you because he's a quarterback that needs that play action, that timing, and stuff like that. He needs those play action throws that allow him to run around in circles and then bounce around and find a guy wide open, right? That's who Russ is. But the key numbers, 5.2 yards per carry by Denver, okay? That is a key factor in the game. The 49ers will not stop running the ball if they're averaging 5 yards a pop.
Right.
They're going to run it down your damn throat all damn game. Now, Seattle, on the other hand, Rashad Penny looked solid. He had 5 yards per carry, and that's all they really did. They had 60 yards in total rushing outside of their quarterback. Niners looked pretty damn solid in the run game. So I'm very excited about what the 49ers are capable of doing when their offense and defense match up fairly well. I get it. It's a division game. People are like, well, you those games are harder. Yeah, those games are harder when the other team's pretty solid, when the other team's good. Like Seattle's trash. Like I'm be straight up with everyone. Seattle's trash. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat stuff anymore because when you see a team is trash, like what are you supposed to do, right? They just lost Jamal Adams. They lost two other players in their group. They have a couple good linebackers. Their defensive line is nothing much. 49ers should be able to pounce on them. They have a lot of young corners that Kyle's going to pick on. I guarantee you, Brandon Ayuk has a very big game Sunday. Guaranteed.
I agree. And I mean, the only reason why I'm hesitant to say it is because I thought Chicago was going to be an easy game as well, and it clearly wasn't. There's something to be said about divisional games. I do think that they get the dub. For me, the one thing that I want to see, Marco, is I don't want to put the pressure on Trey to have to play from behind again, right? And one thing that Seattle did was they jumped out to an early lead against Denver. I think that's what's going to be key for the 49ers. And it's something that I think a lot of people aren't talking about. We talked about it a little bit early, but the ineptness of scoring in the first half, right? You could get away with it maybe with a guy like Jimmy who, has that confidence of coming from behind in multiple games and stuff like that. I've seen a guy like Tom Brady be able to do it over and over again. And, he's pretty, cool, Jimmy, whatever it is. Trey hasn't played too many games where he wasn't in the lead. In college, he didn't have to come back too many times, right?
Some games in college, Sunil, he didn't even play the second half.
Right, because they're already up by so much. So that's something that I think is being overlooked. And so I think it's imperative that the 49ers actually score in the first half to make this an easier game for everybody, right? If the 49ers are dictating the game because they're scoring points, that gives it the strength back to the defense, which is, we know their strength is pass rushing. That makes it easier for the secondary. That makes it easier for the depleted safeties. And it goes back to Kyle, man. I think that Kyle really needs to put some more pressure on himself, put some more pressure on the team. Let's make sure that in the first half, we're scoring 17 points, 21 points. Like, it can't just be 7-0 like it was. Because if you keep letting a team hang around, it gets to a point. Then now you're putting a lot on Trey, and it's already a lot. Like, he's already learning on the fly, right? So that's just something that I think is very key. That's what I want to see. I do think that it's a dub. I think it's a little bit closer. I got it like maybe 17-10, just because I still don't have faith that this offense is consistent enough to put up those points. But I love your optimism, my man, that you think that they're going to put up points.
I'm going to ask you a quick question, though, Sunil. So if we look at the first drive of the 49ers game, right, that's the first drive that Trey hits Brandon Ayuk on a wide open crossing route. He gets 31 yards after at that play. And then Deebo Samuel fumbled at the 12-yard line.
Right.
The 49ers were moving the damn ball.
Cooking.
They were I was like, whoa. Like, when I saw that, I was like, whoa, is this what Kyle Shanahan's offense with Trey Lance going to look like? And I was picturing, like, okay, with dry weather, if he's doing this, like, I was like, okay, you just did a quick end around with Brandon Ayuk. You go back to Deebo, and now you're throwing. I'm like, okay, you're cooking, man. Like, you're really cooking. And then Deebo fumbles. That's something that I think 49ers fans on social media are not talking about because they're afraid to criticize the dude that just got paid, right? Like, they're like, no,
right.
Like Deebo doesn't do he fumbled the ball to 12-yard line. Let's be real. He fumbled. That probably cost them 7 points with how good they were actually driving, especially when
at least 3, right? At least 3 minimum.
But when you're running the ball, when you're averaging, they were averaging like 6 yards a carry, and they hadn't even started running the ball with Elijah Mitchell, right? It was a Deebo Samuel. It was the first play of the game was Brandon Ayuk like on an end around for 7 yards. He gets to the 50, and then a 31-yard, and then a 6-yard end around to Deebo, and then a 31-yard pass to Brandon Ayuk got him to like the 12. So they hadn't even started running the ball. Imagine when they started running the ball inside the red zone. I see 7 points. So it should have been 14-0, and then in those conditions, 14-0, and they were already getting to.
It's a totally different game. It's a totally different game. I agree with you, but the problem is we can't just keep going off of potential. You know what I mean? What could have happened. At the end of the day, they do have to execute, and that's the thing, Marco. You're absolutely right. they are good enough. I'm not saying that it's not there. What I'm saying is it's so consistently inconsistent in the sense that it's always right there, but it's never there. And we need to get it to a point where it's just there. So I agree. I see what you see. I just haven't seen it actually be executed enough to where I just know for a fact it's going to happen. And that's what I guess I'm looking for.
So would you have expected Deebo Samuel to fumble the ball even with the weather conditions? No, right? Like, so like they stuff that like
but he did.
I'm like, but he did, right? So
right. So I'm saying, and they weren't ever able. Like, it wasn't like that was the only play, right? They had 2 or 3 more drives after that. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I don't want to. I'm a homer, right? I'm a Kyle Shanahan stan, right? So I definitely have gone into, giving them the benefit of the doubt, I just think that it's more imperative this season more than any other season that this team get out to some leads, because I think that otherwise we're going to see similar situations that we saw in week 1, only because Trey doesn't have the experience really. And that's just what I'm worried about.
No, I 100% agree with what you're saying. But when you're the highest paid receiver on your roster and you just sat out of camp and you supposedly came into camp a little bit out of shape, right? Mm-hmm. And then you fumble the ball, it's like, hey, bro, you got to make life easier on your quarterback that's young. Right. And that's what we paid you. Like, we paid you to be that dude who's going to make life easy on him, yet you're making life hard on him. And then, but I do agree, the throw, that missed throw to Croft, that should have been a touchdown. That's right. Point. You have to put points on the board. Right. But at the end of the day, we keep, if I'm playing that if game, if this, if that, at the end of the day, the weather conditions played a factor. And the Chicago Bears capitalized on the opportunities the 49ers defense gave them, and they won the game. So it's going into week 2, a little bit better weather. I've been looking at the forecast. I was one of the first to tweet out the weather, because I'm like, damn, like, what if it rains? Because the other day, like, so 2 weeks ago here, I don't know where you stay, but
I'm in LA. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm right here in the Central Valley. The other day it was like 116, and then like 3 days later it started sprinkling and raining on us. I was like, all right, what's going on? But it's because of that, like, the supposed San Diego weather. So we're getting a little bit of that. So, like, there's a good chance it rains in Santa Clara. Let me check. So at first, when I checked yesterday, it was at 40%, and I tweeted out it was at 40% expected to rain. It is now 76% precipitation. At game time, it'll be around 66. It drops all the way to like 67. So it for sure is going to rain. It might be sprinkling. It says light showers. But it's for sure raining. Hopefully, the next few days, those clouds get pushed away up north to like Oregon area. But it's for sure going to rain, it looks like. And I think it'll be a lot lighter rain. It'll be just showers, and the wind factor will be better. So I think it will be better conditions for the 49ers to cook.
I love it, Marco. So you're expecting a blowout victory for the 49ers.
Yeah, I just don't see that. The reason why I say this isn't because I expect the 49ers offense to go and put up crazy numbers. But if we look at what they did, they put up 300 yards in a monsoon, right? They put up 300 yards. They should have had more points. I agree, they should have had more points. But I don't see anything from that Seattle offense on Monday Night Football that says, you know what, this team's going to hang around with the kind of defense the 49ers have. With the weather the 49ers defense had, it kind of limits you to what you could do. You don't want to blitz, because now if you blitz and that guy that you blitz misses on Justin Fields, now Justin Fields is running free, running loose, right? So that's stuff that we didn't see from DeMeco Ryans, because DeMeco Ryans he's an aggressive defensive play caller, and I think he's going to put the pressure on Geno Smith. Geno Smith isn't the runner that Justin Fields is.
Nope.
So it'll be. I think the defense will lead us to a blowout victory.
I love it. I agree as far as the victory part. I hope that it is a blowout, man, because look, it's very quick. Like it's you could change a narrative very quickly in the NFL, right? So now it's been very down on Trey and the 49ers. They go and they have a dominant victory against Seattle. There's going to be some of the haters that are like, oh, it's just Seattle. But for the most part, I'm sure the faithful and everybody would be a lot more confident if they could go out and just, crush the Seahawks and give Pete Carroll a big L from Kyle Shanahan. I love it. Marco, well, that's the show, man. Thank you so much for joining in. I want to thank all of the guys in the chat section. You guys really were lit and gave a lot of great comments and questions for the team. Marco, you got anything that you need to plug while we got the crew still here?
So yeah, so I do have a podcast with my boy Rohan. Don't really know. I don't like saying the last name because I butcher it every time. So my boy Rohan, Chakravarti. So I usually butcher it. So I'm not good with names. But my boy Rohan and I have a podcast, 49ers Red Zone podcast. That's where you find my stuff. I also am new to writing for All Cardinal, which is Stanford Cardinal. I am gonna be a credentialed writer for them, covering Stanford and stuff like that.
That's huge.
So, if you guys like college football and stuff like that, Stanford is a local team to the Bay Area, so that's kind of what I'm going to do. A little bit, kind of go one way, but also staying with the NFL route. So that's pretty much all I really do for the most part is my podcast, join other podcasts, and I'm going to be writing more in terms of college ball.
I love it, Marco. And great segue, because in just an hour, a little less than an hour, at 7 p.m. Pacific, your man Rohan Chakravarti is coming on the show. So we're going to be doing this all mainly talking about the next game, because I think you did a great job talking about where the 49ers are at right now. So like I always say, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll talk again very, very soon. Get some dinner in you and keep it locked in an hour. Have a great night, guys.
I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, Marco.